This episode is sponsored by 1 Minute Calm. Breathe, live, and love the moment that you're in. Hi, I'm Christina, the creator and founder of ZMOF Entertainment International. I want to welcome you to another episode of Health, Wealth, and Happiness, Interviews to Inspire from Cozumel, Mexico. She's a very inspirational guest, has been a friend of mine for over 20 years, right?
Something like that. Yeah, 20.
We'll just go with it. 20
We'll
years.
go with it.
And I'm so excited to have her join us today. Please welcome Renée. So glad that you can be here for this interview as our third guest, and I thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for asking, and congratulations to you for your new podcast. I'm excited to be a part of it. I love the themes, and I can't wait to share and experience whatever happens today.
Yay!
Yay!
Renée is a creative content strategist, a storyteller, and a people lover. And you're going to love her after this interview. So Renée's health word is connected. Renée, tell us a little bit about connected and what that means to you.
I think of connected as a health word like this. So I'm going to give you an example. From my many years of going to the gym and exercising, for instance, which is extremely valuable to me, I call it really training. I think it's important for us to understand that your whole self is connected in one. For instance, you have a body and you have a mind, but you have something deeper than that. And there's an inner self. And have you ever been in a situation, and I'm thinking of you, Christina, and is it okay that I say as a former ballroom dancer, have you ever had someone that you were teaching that they couldn't connect their mind to their feet, or they couldn't connect their emotions to flow with the music? So I think of something that's extremely valuable to health for all of us is to realize that we are all a connected being. And when we endeavor, for instance, if we endeavor to lift weights, that we don't go in there just, pulling on the whatever it is and fussing about ourselves. I've seen a lot of this, especially maybe with women, where I can tell they're working out and they're trying, but their inner self-talk is all over their face. And it's, oh, that's awful. I can't stand what I look like. And, oh, this feels awful. I can't. Well, that's probably not going to create the healthiest approach. And there's going to be a point perhaps where that self-talk or that negative feeling that is louder almost than the actual workout will negate the thing that you're trying to accomplish. And I think this is especially true in health. People say they want to be healthy, but they live a life almost disconnected from the anxiety that they have, or the anger that they're always, fuming about, or the inner self that is struggling, and they don't realize how that is going to play a part in their health. And then they end up, and I'm not suggesting this would happen all the time, but sometimes we don't get the results that we want in our health because we don't realize we're a connected being. And we really, when we come to that place in our health, whether it's to go to a doctor, or whether we really need to view our whole selves instead of just one aspect. So that's what I mean by connected.
Yeah. And yes, back to ballroom dancing, working with people. It's even mentoring people now. It's the connection that you're talking about. Totally. You can see it, because if you're not letting yourself be connected and you're putting up that wall and going, yes, but the wall is still there, it's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. I was just talking with someone about this recently, about how if you're, for instance, if you want coaching, or if you want a relationship, but you always have a guard up, and that is a very difficult thing for people like ourselves, maybe, who we've given or we've shared a lot, or we're very open, we tend to be more open to people, we can be a little more vulnerable, and that can result in hurt. And then it's easy to want to stay pulled back, stay shielded. And I understand it. Boy, do I. But if we can come to a place of coaching or a place of communication where we unveil our heart, and we just come as our authentic selves, then we bring the richness of our whole self to the table. And then we also receive that way too, right? So it's not just one aspect.
Yeah. So not only connecting ourselves, but the ability to connect to others. Is there a time that you had somebody that you were working with that seemed like a struggle, and you were wondering, how can I break through? How can I connect to this person? And how do I get them to connect to themselves? I know you've had lots of interesting clients over the years.
I'm laughing because while you're talking, I'm thinking of so many. I mean, they're just rolling through my mind. Two stories. One where someone didn't connect. And so several years ago, I had what I'm going to call a side journey. And I was working in, let's say, a very high-end establishment, helping people with their health. And I was a director of this, without going into a lot of details. And I remember working with a specific client. He was an extremely successful gentleman. He had many things going for him, but his health was lagging, and he came to us to help him with that. But every time he came with the same attitude. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Well, but you don't understand. Now this gentleman was probably rounding the top of the 50s, age 50s. But he would tell me every time about, well, I don't like to eat. I don't eat any vegetables. Well, why don't you eat vegetables? Well, I don't like them. Well, why don't you like them? Well, because when I was a little kid, my mom cooked every vegetable until it was dead. And so I don't like vegetables. And so I said to him one day, "Sir, how old are you?" And he told me, and we smiled at each other. And I said, "That was quite a while ago. You've had a little bit of time to try vegetables a different way. So my recommendation is you pick a vegetable and you give it a shot. You try a couple of vegetables," because he was having some health issues that his doctors were saying, if you don't work these things out, and some of it was definitely the choices of his food, because he was he limited himself to very few foods, mostly, just these things that he thought that he liked the taste of. So he ended up over time really not gaining what he came for, because he didn't understand the value of being connected in his willingness. So here's a mental change. Here's the connection between a mind and body is, if you want your body to change, you may have to change your mind, and you may have to change your viewpoint. And if you realize that those things are connected, then the sky's the limit. So, and then I'm thinking of this one gentleman who used to go to the gym all the time. And he decided one day to come to my Pilates classes. I'm a Pilates instructor, certified Pilates instructor. And he was super into just lifting weights. And he wanted to be super buff. And he was also just an amazing gentleman. He and his wife had an incredible business, and he brought her too. But what I saw with this man was he understood the value of learning something he had never done before, and just being totally open to it. And because of that, his health shifted so much, and he changed his physique, his mind, his emotions. And one day he said to me, "Renée, my life is so different now." And then he told me he went to his doctor, and his doctor said, "What are you doing?" And as he was getting his physical, and he said, "What do you mean?" And the doctor said, "You are actually 1 inch taller than you've ever been." And this gentleman was also in his middle years. And he said, how is that possible? And so my client told the gentleman, or told his doctor, what he had been doing. And the doctor said, well, keep doing it. But what I see here is like the opposite effect. One person who didn't understand the connection of their whole self, and another person who was willing to really, in some ways, be very humble because he was coming to learn something he had never done before. He was willing to look stupid or think that he might look stupid, even though we know that he didn't look stupid. But he came and he connected the dots and changed his life for the better.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's interesting when you, either way, when you are so willing to give and help someone along the way and going, look, I have some things that I can offer you. You can take them or leave them. But when they start to listen to your guidance, because you have all the experience, you've been there and you've seen so many people go through it, and to watch that growth and that connection, one from a instructor, a guide for someone, to that within themselves, it's a beautiful path. And kudos to you for all of that you have done for so many people.
Well, it's one of my favorite things to do, whether it's writing for people or helping them build their business or working with them physically, is to see people succeed and to see them grow regardless of what direction it is. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So is there a time in your life when you really realized you needed to create your own connection that kind of sparked you?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, for sure. So many times. I kind of think it's an ongoing process. Um, I can't give you one specific time right now, but I would say that for me, life is a series of feeling connected to my inner self, my mind, my emotions, my physique. But oh yes. So something is coming to me, and I wanted to share this. I don't know if I'll get through it without crying though. And my mom was someone very early on in my life that taught me the value of health, connections. And that was when, I don't know if this is like, we should put a rating on this, but that was when, or TMI, that was when I first started my menstrual cycle as a young girl. And the first few times I had a lot of cramps. And one day my mom came to me. I was sitting in a chair and I was kind of all hunched over. And she said, "What's going on, dear?" She liked to call me dear. And I said, "Oh, I've got cramps." And she said, "How much water have you drank?" And I went, I don't know. And she said, "You need to drink more water during that time." And I said, "Okay." And then she said, "Your body will feel much better if you get up and move." And I was probably, I was a tween. I was very young when that process began for me. And that connection became one of the most valuable pieces of advice I ever got, because it was from there I realized that I felt so much different when I moved. And when I moved, my body changed. And when I moved, the feeling of pain lessened greatly. And it became a thing for me. And it was almost like a magic wand that I took with me, everywhere I went. And I've really used that valuable training, even some days emotionally, when I'm feeling not so great, or when I'm sad, or when I'm struggling to get my work done. One of the greatest things I do for myself is stop and do something physical to get me on that path again and connect me.
I love that. And as someone who does help people, coach people, what kind of advice could you give someone to help get more connected with themselves?
You have different voices, meaning that we all have an inner self that's kind of like this invisible thing. we don't know for sure what we might call it different things depending, but we have an inner self. And one of the greatest things I think people can do to connect better with themselves is listen to your inside, because your inside will guide you. Years ago, I was a runner, and I ran, and every spring, the county that I lived in, their police force would host. They would host like safety for runners, and one of the things that they always stressed was listen to your inner self. If you're running down a road and you turn down a side street, and when you start running down that side street, you get this weird, bad feeling, turn around and run out of it, because that's your inner self, your inner guide telling you. And I think that also applies to, what if we listen to that connection when we were eating? I used to say to my students at the college, if an hour after you eat, you get a really bad headache, stop what you're doing and turn around and look at what you ate an hour ago. And perhaps some of that is talking to you. If you want to be more fit, for instance, listen to the voice of your body. Don't do too much or too little. And I know sometimes people overdo it and then they go, well, I went and I got injured. Well, perhaps, and I'm not suggesting that we won't get injured sometimes and things happen, bad things do happen. But I believe that if we can listen to our inner voice and we can listen to that inner self, we will make advancements more than we would ever imagine.
Listen to that inner voice. We can talk to it too sometimes. Right out loud. Renée, your second word for wealth is generosity. Ooh, I like this one. Tell me more about how you define wealth as generosity.
So when I think of wealth equals generosity, I like to think of it like this. A person who is well off, to me, is not just a person that has a lot of things, a lot of finances, a lot of even persuasion, but it's their ability to be generous, have a generous eye to others. And I love that and I could name like sports figures. I could name people in the news, in the media, who are those kinds of people. For some reason, Kobe Bryant comes to my mind about, he was an extremely superb player. He was a tournament winner. He was at the height of his career. And what was he thinking about? Other people, thinking about helping children, thinking about serving underprivileged or underserved communities. For me, a lot of the idea of wealth is, I would like to help by taking what I have, which means I do have to accumulate. So there is a need to accumulate, but then I want to be a conduit and say, okay, I've got some and I can share some. I can offer this because I have some. And so I think what I mean by generosity is having a generous eye, not saying, well, I have to keep getting and getting and getting. And okay, well, that's okay. But when will there be a day where you go like, I have too much stuff, But if I have some things, which is great, because I do need wealth in order to create a conduit to offer others. But for me, real wealth is being able to say, okay, I got some, now I want to give some. And then I'm going to do it again. And maybe it's in different ways, depending. So for me, one of the ways that I do is sometimes I've coached people in their businesses or helped them build their brand without really asking for a lot back, because I saw their vision and I cared about them. And I had that like generous eye of, there's that saying like, the farmer plants the seed. Actually, there are still farmers all over the world because otherwise we wouldn't eat. But they go out in the spring and they plant and they have these seeds and then they cover it with dirt and then they go away and they go, there's nothing there. And I love that opportunity to bless people, to give into someone's life. And I know that with my generous eye back to myself, that's going to come back to me. And I'm not doing it for that reason, but I love that idea of being a conduit so that wealth is a river that flows, not a cesspool that stops.
Well, how do you balance that in your own life? What?
Yeah. I think so. Speaking to the I think that if I was going to say this, not everybody is this person, but I think that there are some of us who are extremely other people minded, and we do have to balance. So we have to find that, and it's a gray area because it's like, wow, when do I turn my eyes from others to do for myself? And so I think it's going back to the first word. I think you have to stay connected and listen to your inner self, and also, look at what's going on in your life and say now, and goals are important and all those things. And so we do need to have that sort of framework and a structure that we can build towards. That's very essential. So I don't want to sound too ethereal here, and I certainly don't want to sound too selfless, because really it's the building of yourself when you give to others. But there is a time to say no, and I have to focus my energies this way. So I think because if it's a gray area, you really have to take it like a step at a time, and also a kind of a moment at a time. Like, okay, this is being asked of me. Is this my yes or is this my no? And I used that once as an example when I was doing a broadcast on Facebook with some friends about, is this my yes? It's like seeing that moment of need and saying, is this my yes? Because sometimes it might be my no. And I know, for instance, living in a very large market where I've lived for a long time, and there are people at every street corner that ask for help, but not every one of those is a yes. And I need to know which one is a yes and which one is a no. And that is, again, like really being connected to your inner self and listening. And other things like what's in your bank account or things like that. So, I mean, I think it's a big picture. I don't know if that made sense, but
It makes perfect sense to me and to our listeners. With your generosity word, if there's other people who are trying to figure out, I'd like to be generous with my wealth, with my things, with my time, because that's a generous offering as well. What advice could you give someone in finding their generosity? Where to start?
that is a great question. Thanks for asking that. I can think of two things that come to mind. Start small with, for instance, what I described earlier in the very large market that I've lived in for many years, where there's, find someone that you feel that compassion for, and reach out and offer something small, or find something that matters to you, something that ticks a box in your heart, like um, an issue, children, animal welfare, and become a part of it. I wouldn't jump all in, because especially the very generous of heart can tend to do that. And then afterwards they're like, how am I going to do all this? So starting small is a wise idea, but absolutely open your eyes to what makes you happy, what makes you smile. Um, if you love puppies, well, there's probably puppies you can go pet somewhere, or you can go to the Humane Society, or you can host an event, maybe not host an event, but help others. Go to a soup kitchen and scoop out soup and say hello to people who want to rise, but maybe just can't right now. And that would be a great place to start.
I love that advice. It's already out there for you. It's just finding it and reaching out.
Exactly. And I think especially in, I think one of the things that in the United States we are very blessed about is that we are very other people focused to help other folks. So you can go to rescue places, you can go to soup kitchens. There's always some event. In the area where I'm staying right now, there's children on that do that basically have no food if they don't eat with someone giving them food. And a group of people started an after school event where they host the students doing sports and recreation. And then afterwards, like chefs come in and make a big meal. Well, you could donate food, you could give money, you could show up and again, just like scoop out food, or you could, stand and cheer kids on that are playing games that maybe they can't do in a school environment. Anything.
Generosity to others, even you'll feel it in your heart.
You will feel it in your heart. And there's that saying, and I think it's actually, I think it's like a quote, but it says, it's more blessed to give than receive. But the thing is, I think what it really means is if you give, you receive. And then you give it again, you receive. Like when you give, there's such an abundance that rises inside of your own self. And a lot of times that also includes when you give something financially, it has a way of coming back to you, whether it comes back in like the form of, hey, since you gave to this, maybe you could do this and we would pay you for doing a job or a part-time something, or a rising in your visibility that could also be valuable to you. So I think it's a reciprocity that's like a circular thing. So yeah.
On health, wealth, and happiness. I am Sylvia. Happiness. Oops, I should probably not show the brand. Having a drinky winky here in Cozumel, Mexico. Happiness. Having the best days of your life every day. Happy touring. Happiness to happiness.
Your happiness word is childlike enthusiasm. Oh, yes. Again, I told you I've known Renee for a long time. Right? That is what connected us in the beginning, is her big smile, her enjoyment of life, her enjoyment of everyone. When you're around Renee, her words come out and just hug you and go, let's go play. Let's go have some fun. Let's go see life together. So that's what I have to say. What do you have to say?
I think one of the reasons that I live a joy-filled life. Recently, I was talking to a friend on the phone. She lives in the big area where I lived for a long time. And she knows that I'm living currently in a place that's a little bit more cloudy than I like, a little bit less sunny, but she's like, you sound so happy. And I said, thank you. But it's the joy of what I see every day. It's that child, like, for instance, it is said that children laugh 400 or more times a day. But are you ready for this? Adults laugh something like four to 10 times a day. But what if you didn't? What if you took off that old person self, whether your old person is 20? Because I've met 20-year-olds that act very old and very serious. And I'm not suggesting that there's not reasons to be tons serious and to take serious your job and your work and all of those things and issues but stop and look and you'll see something beautiful. I want to go back to share a story that I might not get through without crying, but it's about my mom. So where did I somehow get some of my childlike enthusiasm? So the last few months that my mom was alive, probably the last month, I'm fairly certain that she knew that her heart was wearing out and her body was wearing out. But every day was an absolute feast for her. She never complained. She was disabled. She couldn't walk by herself. She couldn't stand up by herself. She couldn't sit down by herself. She couldn't put herself to bed. She couldn't get up by herself. But she would sit, and where she was living, there was a field of buttercups, little yellow flowers, and she loved watching the buttercups, and she would watch them in the day. And then she would love to watch the little squirrels that ran around. And I think childlike enthusiasm comes down to, will you just stop and enjoy what's right there? Or will you giggle at that thing? Or what, have you ever giggled at your own self? Did you ever wear two different pairs of shoes or two different socks? Then you were look down and go, or did you run out the door without the very thing that you absolutely had to have for your presentation? And instead of fuming about it, what if you laughed about it? What if you thought that it was funny? And I think our childlike enthusiasm can go all the way back to our word connected, because, and generosity, it's all together, it all ties in, because your childlike enthusiasm will give you a life filled with beautiful moments of joy. It will give you an opportunity to laugh at the funniest thing that maybe somebody else doesn't see as funny, but you see, and smile at the simple beauties of life.
Since I've always known you, I have seen that joy come from you. Is there a time where you felt too adult and you needed to bring that joy back into your life that you are willing to share?
Oh my goodness. Yes, more than once. Um, I think about a time when I was young, I was married. I was then divorced pretty early, and I was really lonely. I was living somewhere where I didn't know anyone. I mean, I had made some friends, but I didn't have any family. I didn't grow up there. I didn't know the area very well. And I remember that I became very um, pensive and lonely. And I finally one day I was like, I need a mindset transplant. Like, I need a change. I need to start seeing the value of what's here. And for one thing, I started listening to some good, just like help. It was actually Tony Robbins was one of them, who just talked about, like, and I like to say it like this: think about what you're thinking about and stop thinking about some of that stuff. It's not helping, right? And ruminating on, oh my gosh, what if? Well, honestly, what if is probably, now there are people in the world that need to devise plans for the what ifs. Those are brilliant. We're happy for them. But a lot of us are not devising plans for the betterment of the world. We're just freaking out about what might happen that never may. And I started to, and then the other thing I did was I decided to become more of a runner, and I got in a running group, and I started meeting more people, and I just took a chance. I stepped out of my I don't know anyone box, and I'm really lonely. And I just went places and started meeting people and go, and over time those sifted. Um, and you find ones that sort of stick and then ones that don't. But yes, absolutely. I had to do a little mind transplant myself, and started looking up and out and seeing all of the good things that were there. And it really made a difference.
You're such a grand giver. And it's neat to see that excitement, when there's no better way than to learn something when you're pulling your own bootstraps up and you go, oh, I did it. I made it. I'm through.
Yeah.
And then you see somebody else and you're like, oh, honey, we got this. We got this.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and you learn again and again that I've done it once, I can do it again, and I can bring myself back to that joy. Do you
I,
have anything you do on a daily or weekly basis that's just for you to make sure that you keep that happy factor?
Oh my goodness, for sure. I mean, going all the way back to the word connected. Well, I have quiet time every morning. I have two kitties. They're not little anymore, but I got them when they were a little baby, when they were little baby, I don't know, needed adopted. And we sit on the floor and I have quiet time. Sometimes I sing, sometimes I read, sometimes I meditate or pray, and I pet them and they purr, and I love that. And that's just like a really deeply satisfying time. I connect regularly with friends um, and a lot of my friendships right now are long distance, but I do it. Um, and I definitely I plan every day to do some movement. And wow, what a difference. And then, yeah, I definitely listen to my thoughts. And sometimes I'll be like, hmm, wow, Renee, you want to not go down that road. So let's let's evert that, or let's shift that and look for some other ways to think. But I think a lot of that is self-awareness. But yes, every single day, without fail, I have those times alone, those times to build myself, those physical times. And then I just like to eat some good food that's that's that makes me feel happy, tastes good, but it's good for me too. And then every now and then I like to eat chocolate. That's not a bad thing.
Chocolate. We love chocolate.
Yeah. And laugh. Laugh is one of my favorite things to do. Um, I think laughter is infectious, and I try to laugh. Yesterday, for instance, I was at the gym and I was using a big ball, and the ball had been up on a shelf, and I used the ball for a while. And when I went to put the ball back up, I thought I put it up, turned around, walked away, and it bounced down right behind me. And I heard myself laughing immediately. I was like laughing at it. And I realized that someone turned and looked at me, and maybe turned and looked at me kind of oddly. And I was like, well, it was humorous to me. I thought it was funny, just to laugh at. And I don't mean to laugh at others. I want to make that clear, because I don't laugh at others, and I don't like laughing at someone else's pain and suffering. That is not what I'm talking about. But just laughing at the silly things in life, and being appreciative. So I try to laugh a lot.
Yeah. And I saw a similar bell curve to what you were talking about, laughter in life, where it started as children laugh and then it went down and then it came back in the 80s. And I thought that was an interesting change.
Wow.
They said, yeah, 80s. And then they said average life expectancy is 78. So to get back to laughter and that childlike quality takes decades for some people. Based on your experience, what kind of tips might you give people of how to find and connect with that childlike happiness within themselves?
Yeah. Stop. Okay. If I was talking to people that understand Disney stories, stop listening to the evil stepmother in the mirror. Stop listening to the inner critic. Maybe give yourself some more grace and start looking at, for one thing, get outside and look at some nature. Enjoy nature. Oh my goodness. Like, for instance, if you ever watch squirrels chase each other, they're hilarious. And I don't even think they ever know what they're doing, but it doesn't matter to them. They're having a great time. So or one day I was walking along the side of the road, and it was particularly really hard season. Not long after my mom passed away, a lot going on that was extremely sad to me. But I noticed that along the side of the road, where the cracked brown dirt that was hard from no rain, there was one sunflower that grew up on the side of the road between the asphalt and the stone wall. One sunflower. Be that sunflower. See the beauty in life. Get outside, breathe, and give yourself some grace, and treat yourself the way you might treat someone else that you really love. That would be a good idea too.
If you could give the gift of health, wealth, or happiness to someone, who would it be and why?
Ooh, everybody. Do I have to pick one person? I would love to give. So the who, I think that probably the most valuable gift that you can give somebody is their health. But I would want everyone to experience those gifts.
So everybody can have them. Renee, here's your gift of health. On the side, we have a slice of wealth and a little happiness.
Love it.
Meet us at 1 o'clock right here.
Hey, absolutely.
So we have a question from our previous guest, Renée.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Well, I love that question because I ask that a lot as a biographer and a biography writer. So I'm going to go back to the evil stepmother's voice, but don't listen to her. Step back from that and see yourself. Maybe see yourself through the lens of the person who you know loves you the most. And especially if you're struggling with your self-esteem because that can play very heavily in your life. So see yourself with childlike eyes and see your own beauty and see your own gifts. And then know that you also are a part of a whole world of people, many of whom will offer you things. And lift your eyes and look for those people because they're out there. You might not find them right away, but you will find them. So see yourself through the eyes of someone who really loves you, in case you're not sure you know how to do that. And look for the people that will help you and see your own giftedness because you've got it.
So I would love to have the opportunity to keep this conversation going and do more of these podcasts with you because I think you're such an amazing woman. You're dynamic. You have such a wealth of information to share with everybody. Your generosity to me.
Thank you. I would love it. Yes.
We'll see Renee again soon.
Yay.